Hello and welcome to Business 7, your economics and financial program. In tonight's program, we're talking the Namibian economy, where it is, what the prospects are, what we need to do to get back on track. We're also talking Heineken and Namibia breweries and what the global beer giant entails to do with NamBrew following its acquisition. Please stay tuned.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
Business 7 is not just about developments on the Namibian business landscape, but also about what is happening on the continent of Africa. As usual, here are the top 5 business stories in Africa over the past week as supplied by Reuters.
Here are 5 business stories making headlines in sub-Saharan Africa this week. Germany backs the African Union getting a seat at the G20 group of large economies, its Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Thursday, as the West seeks to woo the continent away from rivals like China. The bid, which has also been supported by the presidents of the United States and France, would give one of the world's fastest-growing regions a bigger voice on key issues such as climate change. China received its first cargo of maize, totaling 53,000 metric tons, from South Africa this week, official news agency Xinhua said. That's as the world's top buyer of the grain seeks to diversify its purchasing markets. Ethiopia will issue up to 5 banking licenses to foreign investors in the next 5 years, a senior central bank official said on Wednesday. Under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government, sectors previously controlled by state firms have been opened up in a bid to drive foreign investment inflows and economic growth. The day after Nigeria's Senate gave its approval, the lower house of parliament has backed a plan to restructure 23.7 trillion naira, or $52 billion in short-term loans due to the central bank, to long-term debt. Government revenues have been under pressure as oil production fell due to crude theft in the Niger Delta, forcing authorities to seek overdrafts from the central bank to plug growing deficits. And finally, Congo Republic's environment minister has said countries that are home to the rainforests and peatlands that are vital to limiting climate change want easier access to sovereign carbon credits. That's a financial scheme established by UN climate agreements designed to reward countries for protecting ecosystems. Arlet Sudan Nano said access to the sovereign carbon market could help to grow the country's GDP by up to 40%, as well as funding the energy transition and sustainable job creation.
Every day, you make choices that make you legendary. Journey together with us on the path to securing your legacy as a member of the League of Legends. With the Select Platinum Bundle Fee Premium Bank offering, you will access tools that will enable you to thrive. If you earn 850,000 Namibian dollars per annum or more, you can apply for this offering today via bankvinted.com.na for only 447 Namibian dollars per month. Bank Vinted, a member of Capricorn Group.
We're post-recession, post-pandemic. Where is the Namibian economy at? Joining us is Monique Cloete. She is the Managing Director of Liberty Life Namibia. A focus edition like Working Nation will not be possible without the support of sponsors and clients, and from our side I'd like to thank all of you who've made this publication possible, and especially Liberty Life Namibia, Monique Cloete, MD of Liberty. Thank you very much for once again being part of this project and for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you very much for having me, Joe. I really appreciate the invitation.
Monique, you guys have a keen finger on the pulse of Namibia's economy. What is the state of the economy at the moment?
So, Joe, what we are seeing is quite a robust, well, not robust is the wrong word, but we are seeing a strong recovery and quite a sustained recovery starting to come through. So real GDP growth was at roughly 4.5% in 2022. The expectation is 3% in 2023, and then being tempered a little bit to 2.9% subsequent to that. I think if we compare Namibia to its southern counterpart, South Africa is very excited about a 1.4% growth. So I think Namibia is definitely, we're seeing a lot better improvement in our GDP growth, mainly driven by the mining sector, particularly diamonds. So we are keenly watching the agriculture and construction sector to understand when we will start to see some of this generation of jobs. Because in the mining sector, it's a particular skill set that's probably being passed around a few employer groups. So we're keenly watching the construction sector, which is still not doing too well, but something that we're keeping an eye on.
What are the opportunities? You've mentioned mining, but what gives Namibia the competitive edge at the moment to lure investment, to sort of, get stuck in, create jobs, recover the economy?
So, Joe, if we look at the short term, it's probably the mining sector that will attract more people. I think the other thing that we've already seen is Namibia as a logistics hub. So we have seen other countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana starting to purchase pieces of our Namibian harbour as a dry dock for their deliveries. So we're seeing Namibia start to become more of a hub for the rest of Africa, distribution into the rest of Africa. And then I think longer term, we have to look at the blue and green economies, where there's really potential long term for Namibia. So how do we use our ocean better for, be it electricity generation, supporting the economy, the fishing sector and so forth? How do we use our resources, our natural resources, to really drive the economy? And then obviously green hydrogen is a big player for Namibia. So helping Namibia become an energy powerhouse over the long term, I think that's really where we can see benefit for the nation. But looking at the shorter term, definitely it's the mining sector and then more of the logistics, which was also a goal for Namibia in the Harambee project.
Precisely. We have all these plans, we have all this potential. What do we need to do to make sure these ideas realize? What are the major stumbling blocks for Namibia at the moment?
So, Joe, I think what we definitely need to do is attract skills. So government's already working on that. There are agreements in place with certain countries already to try and attract those skills to help us with the skill set that we don't have in the country. I think some of the shorter term things we have to consider is where our inflation rate sits at the moment. So we're sitting at about 5.3%. Or that's the expectation for 2023. We did see it pick up in December and January. So we're expecting it to temper a little bit and then a little bit lower in 2024. I think the top of the have we seen the top of the interest rate cycle is another question, because there are some economists that are expecting another 50 basis point hike somewhere in 2023. So those are things we've got to consider. The consumer's already under quite a bit of pressure. We see that in our industry on a daily basis. So there's a lot of pressure on the consumer, and these interest rate hikes are obviously driving quite a bit of that as well. So I think those are some of the things we've got to think about. How do we deal with this? And as individuals, how do we contribute as well in managing our finances better, looking at where we're spending on interest expenses that we could be reducing and so forth.
You've mentioned your own industry. just now. So if you'd kindly allow me, could you elaborate on that? Because it's always good to see you have all these economic developments, but how does it play out in practice? You've said that you see that interest rates, inflation, etc., sort of they are impacting on your particular industry.
Yes. So Joe, for us, we work in a lot of the retail sector, so we see the impact on the individual. So high interest rates means lower disposable income, and some of the first things that we work in long-term insurance. So it's not a tangible product because it's something that only happens when I come to pass. It's not something that I can see the impact on today. So it's one of the first things that I let go. And we find that people are lapsing policies that they've had in place for a number of years because they simply can't afford it. And it's something that we have to, that we're obviously doing a lot of work to talk to customers about, to say, look, but let's see if we can just reduce it rather than foregoing all of this. Let's see if we can reduce it and you can increase it later again once it becomes more affordable. But that's really where we're seeing it. If we look at sort of the level of lapses happening, 97%, because we talk to each of these customers, 97% of them tell us we just can't afford it.
Many challenges still facing the Namibian economy, but indeed, hopefully, a light at the end of the tunnel. Monique, thank you very much for joining us, and once again, thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Joe.
The global beer giant Heineken recently became the majority shareholder of Namibia breweries. Now, the global CEO of Heineken, Dolf van den Brink, last week paid a courtesy visit to President Hage Geingob, and the editor of Namibian Sun, Toivoon Jabela, caught up with him.
Dolf, thank you very much for making time. Really, it's a pleasure for us to speak to you, and I hope you're enjoying Namibia. It's a big development that has taken place here. Everybody's wondering, a typical question that any Namibian would ask today is the rationale behind acquiring the majority stake in Namibia Breweries.
Very good. Thanks for having me, and it's fantastic to be here and to feel the vibe and the energy of the team.
Yes.
Maybe it's good to start at the beginning.
Sure.
Heineken has been a major investor all over Africa for tens and tens of years.
Yeah.
We have operations in over 20 countries, and actually we have been a major investor in Namibian breweries for over 20 years.
Okay.
When we became the second largest investor and shareholder. So it's not new. We know the company intimately well, and we have been part of the extended family, if you like, for a long time.
Yes.
But it was always our dream to further our investment in Southern Africa and in Namibia precisely. And therefore we were very happy and proud to know being able to take over the share of ONL to become the majority shareholder. But it's also really important that we are maintaining the public listing on the Namibian Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Still 40% of the company will be owned by the Namibian people, by the Namibian investors, the pension funds and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, having been involved for that long, you obviously know that it's a proud Namibian company. It's a lot of people see it as some sort of national asset. What are the sort of long-term plans for this investment?
Yeah. First of all, we are equally super proud of the company, its legacy, the history, beautiful brands, Windhoek Lager, Windhoek Draft, Tafel, and we don't change them. Like the Heineken recipe has not changed in 158 years. For sure, we're not going to change the recipe on Windhoek Lager. It's brewed with the Reinheitsgebot, which we're going to respect. And actually, the brewery has a couple of amazing brewmasters who are going to stay with us for the future. So in that sense, the Namibian people can continue to be super proud of the company and the brands. And actually, the company now being part of the larger Heineken company, actually we see a lot of opportunity for export and selling the Windhoek brand in other parts of the world.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, when there's a major development like this, people will always wonder, your beautiful staff, people wondering whether their jobs will be secure or whether there will be, changes in those kind of conditions. What kind of assurances can you give to the nation in that regard?
Yeah, no, so actually as part of our conversations with the competition authority, we actually have made a commitment that there won't be retrenchments, no reductions in number of employees below the management level. Actually we're merging, and that's another aspect, that we are merging Namibian breweries together with the operations of Distel in Namibia. Okay. So there's 125 colleagues of Distel joining into the Namibian Brewery organization. Mm-hmm. So the organization will end up larger rather than smaller.
And I mean, the investment seems to be really huge, one of the biggest ever in the history of our country. What can you tell us about that investment, what it means in the greater scheme of things?
Yeah, no, it's a very big vote of confidence in the potential of Namibia, the future of Namibia, the Namibian people. Having been part of Namibian Brewery as a minority shareholder, we really have high confidence in the future of this country. And that's why we felt confident to make this investment. It's part of a larger investment that we're making across Southern Africa, and we're also gaining control of Distel in South Africa. We're merging these companies together. And as Heineken, we always take a long perspective. Heineken is still a family-controlled company that has been around for many, many years. And we really want to build a business for the future. And Namibia will be an important part of that.
And we are not going to see the company moving somewhere else. It will remain here in this beautiful setup where you've been operating for so many years.
Look, really, that I can guarantee. When you build a brewery, it's so capital intensive. That brewery is going to be there for 50, 80, 100 years. This beautiful brewery has been there for many, many years. As Heineken, we are operating in 75 countries. We have 200 breweries in all parts of the world. So I can really guarantee that brewery will be there. And what we really hope is that with time, with the growth, we can further invest in extending the capacity of the brewery. We're going to do things like, for example, right now, the Distel portfolio is being imported from South Africa. And we're really going to see how parts of that portfolio we can make maybe locally produce, creating new employment here in Namibia.
And in terms of the brands that you proudly listed earlier on, these traditional brands of Namibia breweries, in terms of expanding their footprint globally and whatnot, what are the plans?
Now, so what's already something to be proud of, that as Heineken we have been representing the Windhoek brand in South Africa for many years. We're selling a lot of cases and bottles of Windhoek in the South African market. Now we're going to see how we can further expand that across the African continent and maybe beyond. What's also important, it's partly about the beer brands, but with the Distel portfolio, Savannah Cider, Hunter Cider, Tassenberg Wine, Richelieu, there's a lot of power brands that are going to be part of Namibian breweries going forward. And we really believe that ultimately the Namibian customers will benefit by more choice, more variety being offered.
We also noticed that you visited the President Hage. What can you tell us? I'm sure there are parts that you cannot tell us, but what can you tell us about that visit? How was the reception? What was the nature of the visit?
Well, I can actually tell because the press was present during the meeting from beginning to end. It's all transparent. I'm very grateful to the President for making the time. We are impressed by the leadership of the government in the country. It's one of the reasons why we felt confident investing in the country. The President asked assurances that we keep the legacy and keep the authenticity of the brands and the company, which we promise. As I said earlier, we have no intention whatsoever. Actually, we want to make Windhoek a much bigger brand than it already is today.
Dolf, really a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best. Take care.
Okay.
Very good.
so much to FNB for this opportunity. Thank you so much to FNB. What an experience. I never got to do shopping in 5 minutes, but look at all this.
That's it for Business 7 this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Until next week, take care.
Halima Yaqub Ishaq fled Sudan's violence with her 5 children. 4 days after arriving in neighbouring Chad, they're yet to receive any assistance.
We are totally dependent on the food given to us by the Chadian families in the next village. We have small children and we can't go to work and leave them alone to starve.
While aid agencies are rushing to distribute food and register new arrivals, resources are tight. And the situation looks to get much worse. Parts of Africa were already facing a deepening set of crises, from drought to floods, as well as a growing list of armed conflicts. The demand for life-saving humanitarian assistance has been growing. Now, after conflict erupted between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, an additional 5 million people in Sudan will need emergency assistance. That's according to an internal UN estimate that said half of them would be children. By October, some 860,000 people are expected to have fled to neighbouring countries, including Chad, which has its own dire humanitarian crisis. But just as demand is escalating, resources are being diminished. Analysis of UN funding data for Africa shows financial support from key donor governments is dropping off. That's on a continent that was already facing a $17 billion funding gap for UN humanitarian appeals even before the latest crisis. Here's the World Food Programme's Executive Director, Cindy McCain, during a visit to Somalia this month.
There is going to be less funding this year. I pray there won't be, but the reality of it is that there is going to be less. And so we're going to have to work on doing more with less.
Aid workers, diplomats and donor government officials say funding gaps are likely to grow. That's as Europe focuses on the war in Ukraine, post-Brexit Britain turns inward, and some lawmakers in the United States target budget cuts. Meanwhile, desperation is growing among Sudan's refugees. On Sunday, Chadian soldiers used whips to beat back dozens of women grabbing provisions in one border village. But every day, hundreds more trek across desert scrubland and dry riverbeds to reach Chad's border, seeking safety. Sat in a rare patch of shade, surrounded by other refugees, Ishaq says they're hoping Sudan's crisis can end soon, so they can return home. If not, they will go to look for work. We have orphaned children here, she says, and no one is thinking of how we feed them.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with entertainment. Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news. Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.